Soon I got tired of trying to do this on your own. It is a lot of work to read profiles searching for particular qualities that match your idea of a good relationship. Imagine the hours it can take to create a personal message that gets ignored. It just doesn't pay in the effort or the emotion that you invest. It can be depressing. Then it occurred to me that one of the reasons that dating apps are so ineffective is that no one but the hopeful man has an investment in the relationship search. Enter the matchmaker. On the surface, the matchmaker is a great idea. She, always a she, will discover who you are, what you want, look through their massive pool of potential mates, and set up a date. I can't help but think back to an old movie that featured a wise older woman who paired perfect couples through her worldly insight. Movies can be like that. Real life is far, far different. Reaching out to a matchmaking service can be a real eye-opening experience. What I found when I reached out was that, like anything else, matchmaking is a business. Fees, ranging from $5,000 to $25,000 a month for the privilege of working with a professional over a 3, 6 or 12-month contract. Oh my word. That's expensive. And made me wonder if I would rather be lonely. However, the positive side was that the matchmaker's candidate had also invested in her future mate. The likelihood of being ghosted, finding the insincere or being asked to subscribe to their OnlyFans page, seemed small. Could this fast-track my search? Still, I couldn't get over the cost and said so. Miraculously, and I say that with sarcasm, the matchmaker claimed she had a good feeling about me and saw potential for her paying clients. Yes, it sounded patronizing. Her offer? Pay $100 to become part of a dating pool that the matchmakers would draw from. There would be no active consultations or search for my perfect mate, but I could be selected to go on dates when she, or any of her other matchmaker compadres, thought that I might be a good match. Okay, I said. I'll give it a try. Matchmaker, make me a match. Part 1. A few days later I received my first consultation with another matchmaker. Being the veteran of many interviews, having sat on both sides of the table, I should say that the interview was a breeze. I was prepared. Communicated well. Built rapport. And we laughed several times during the conversation. The passing thought hit me, this is going really well. I wonder if she'll keep me for her own? What a laugh. Then disaster struck. The final question was, how do you view yourself? In fairness, my answer was a good answer. Still, the change in her demeanor and the sudden frown on her face told me that describing myself as traditional was a red flag. What do you mean by traditional? She snarled. Yes, she snarled. I explained my upbringing that included the traditional male role of chivalrous acts and care for the woman, opening doors, providing resources and monogamous love. Stupid me, I thought I was being virtuous. No, was I ever wrong? Her final words were of disdain for my outlook and how I was suddenly no fit for any of her clients. She practically hung upon me. I can only guess. But I could imagine a scenario where acting as a bed warmer and arm candy was the agenda. Leading was not in the job description, however, throwing myself in front of a mugger while handing her my wallet, was. Is this what they call a beta male? A man who is selected to always agree, grovel on cue and stay out of the way until called. But that would only be a guess. What I was most struck by was the sudden change in the conversation and attitude. I felt as if I was being called a misogynist. So I waited a day, turning the conversation over in my mind, then expressed my dissatisfaction with the service. It seemed to me that if my traditionalism was a red flag, then I thought it only fair that I receive a refund and discontinue our relationship. An hour later I received an apology, a refund and an offer to stay on for a year free of charge. It appears that being traditional is in far more demand than I thought. And I'll talk about a few of those experiences in coming pages. Oddly enough, my free year has lasted more than 5 years with no additional effort from me. Matchmakers need a certain caliber of male candidates in remote areas where they don't have a large presence. And the experience has not been without its challenges. Sometimes, I wonder how many people ask themselves basic questions, like who am I? And what do I want in life? Go to any interview in any field, and you will find that the position typically requires a certain level of self-awareness. It is important to relate who you are and what you look for in the future. I believe we intrinsically know on a deep level, and without some thought, it is difficult to relate. Often we want to pick up where they left off in the last positive relationship we had. We long for the closeness of a good friend, a confidant and lover. But few people want to do the work to recreate this experience again. I suppose it's human nature and a product of the loneliness we feel, that we simply want to pick up from this last good point in our lives. My next experience began with a very positive interview and a dinner date. One thing that you will learn is that your matchmaker is often not in the same city as you. So setting up a date can be a bit tricky for them. In my case, I had not been to this place previously and envisioned a posh restaurant within a swanky new hotel that had just opened. I had been there a few times and was looking forward to it. The restaurant/bar was on the edge of a bad part of town. The city had been doing quite a bit to reclaim the area with new construction and businesses, but the ne'er-do-wells in our society still wandered the streets, especially on a Saturday night. Thankfully, once there, it was a pleasant place to be. She apologized for arriving a few minutes late and I playfully forgave her when I discovered she had driven 75 miles from another city to meet me. Not something the matchmaker had mentioned. It is always hard to begin a conversation with someone you just met. We struggled to discover conversation where we have mutual interests and life experiences, and I quickly discovered the things that every answer seemed to circle back to. She was a senior lab tech at a hospital where she put in long hours and she loved her grandchildren. Nothing wrong with either of those things. But there was very few positive things in her life beyond her work and her grandkids. Either her previous life was off limits or there just wasn't anything going on to talk about. So I asked about what she wanted in the future. She seemed confused by the question, so I expounded by asking about where she would travel to if she had the opportunity, new experiences she would like to have, and what she hoped for in her next relationship. She had nothing. The lesson being self-aware, knowing who you are and what you want is a challenge for many people. Loneliness prevents many from coming to know themselves. It is a sad state to be in. I feel that there is an unspoken desire to return to the most positive relationship in their lifetime. Asking questions about who you are now and creating a vision for your future appears to be shut down when one lives in the past. Know thyself. Oh, and if you have to go so far as to bluntly ask these questions at dinner, be prepared for the feedback that these questions are uncomfortable. A fish called Wanda, do you know what you want in a future mate? Most people haven't really spent any time considering the subject. Dating apps ask you to rely on a few pictures and a few short sentences to help you make the decision as to whether this is the kind of person you want to reach out to. My impression, from reading hundreds of profiles, is that women portray a life filled with endless fun with a myriad of friends, interesting hobbies, financial success and the desire to travel the world. Many will use the line, "I don't need a man, but I would like to meet a guy." I always ask myself why they feel the need to be on a dating app. It seems to be an ironic message that you are not really needed in my life. Ironic for me, as I would like to be in a relationship where both partners want and need each other. This idea of disposability in anything but inspiring. Then I ran across Wanda's profile, and if one thing is clear, this is someone who has spent a lot of time thinking about what she wants in a future mate. Wanda begins by lamenting her need to try again following multiple poor experiences with dating sites. She tells the reader that the design of the app is poor and doesn't select the right guys for her to consider. I see someone working very hard to be pre-disappointed. To discourage men taken by her appearance, she uses the name Fish. So if you are not familiar with the 1988 movie, you might wonder how this clearly unattractive name relates to the woman in the pictures. What follows is a list of must-haves for weight, height, moral character, activity level, financial position, career success, and so on. Wanda is then clear about anyone who approaches her must fit into the box she has defined. Her disdain for anyone who doesn't meet her requirements is summed up with "men don't read profiles anyway." Can't say she isn't wrong about that. Men are very visual and most profiles seem to be duplicates of the one before. However, Wanda is definitely one that deserves reading before expressing any interest. Wanda is classically pretty for a woman in her late 50s. Long blonde hair, athletic build and flawless skin. She describes herself as a specialist in the beauty industry. Of all the pictures I have seen over the years, there only appears to be one major flaw in her presentation. She never smiles. The sad truth is that this is one very unhappy woman. I would go so far to say miserable. Whether her outlook comes from poor life experiences or bad advice, it is clear that she expects failure even before meeting you. Imagine going skydiving for the first time and the person behind the counter finding fault with you before you speak to them. The signs on the wall warn that your parachute is unlikely to open, assuming that you don't die in a fiery crash upon takeoff. "You are going to die" is playing on the radio and the insurance kiosk appears to be long out of applications. There is an extremely small number of people with the optimism to even try. Most will fail because they didn't read the posted signs. It is not easy for men to see a pretty girl who is crying and not want to fix what is wrong. I have to wonder how many have reached out with that mindset. But this isn't like finding a 1964.5 Mustang left in a barn for years that is in pristine condition. This will take a tremendous amount of work, money and sadly, heartache. All for a car that might never run. Communication is sales, and at some point, you have to ask who knows more about winning the Indy 500. Would you rather ask advice from the guy who won the last race or your high school driving instructor? Clearly a winning driver. Unfortunately, the driving instructor appears to be the case for most women in an industry dominated by women. I can imagine that somewhere she was advised to clearly spell out her expectations to weed out all of the guys who would approach her who she would deem unqualified. Wanda is building a box for her new boyfriend. I find this sad. While I understand the importance of having boundaries and values, placing someone in a box is a recipe for boredom. The man would do nothing unexpected, nothing interesting, and most importantly, they will never delight or surprise you.